starts today. Targets 4 million children in 8 regions. Very important. And national food safety guidelines launched.
The Ghanaian Times says BOG dissents on money doublers, warns public against their activities. Former President Mahama, PPP flag bearer, filed nomination forms for 2020 polls. 2 jailed 8 years for stealing cash from Bullion van. And Pualugu irrigation dam will bring socio-economic transformation, President assures.
The Daily Guide, show one social relief, Bawumia to NDC. Final register for parties in November. Another one village, one dam ready. Mahama files papers for 2020 polls. And Fidelity Bank unveils Kukwa.
Okay. The Chronicle says Nana has cleared his way for 4 more. Talency chief. I grew economy by $14 billion, Mahama. We will do government business, but not at the peril of our survival as MPs. Plus, vote Akufo-Addo to protect Ghana's gains.
The Daily Statesman, let's not return to the bad Mahama days. Bawumia urges electorate to retain Akufo-Addo to protect Ghana's gains. La Elders to start redevelopment of aviation land. And Talency endorses Akufo-Addo's second-term bid. There you go.
Okay. The New Crusading Guide says Mahama's government symbolizes bad marriage. Veep punches. In team launches street campaign to support 4 more for Akufo-Addo. Carlos submits nomination form to EC as he heightens campaign in Tema West constituency. Hey. And Felicia Mui is legitimate queen mother at Dome Market.
Daily Heritage, Mahama goes door to door after campaign launch. And Cocoa Board case, state calls new witness today. Also, make your work attractive to save Gadangwe. And I'll create 24-hour economy with decent jobs and salaries, says Mahama.
Okay.
The ABC News says President Akufo-Addo, a promise keeper. That's according to the Tong Rana. MPP government has performed better. Wasa Etubiasi chief. First Lady takes health outreach to Tema. And the editorial says, election 2020, political actors should desist from fanning ethnic sentiments.
The Daily Post, of Operation 1 Million Jobs, we will turn our economy into a 24-hour economy, Mahama declares at retail campaign launch. Also, Akufo-Addo's police arrest WhatsApp news editor David Tamaklo for publishing correct accounts of ever persecution at New Edubiasi. And Gabi told me NDC will jail him if Mahama wins, A+ reveals.
Yeah, the Business Finder says, pensioners not worse off. SNIT declares government send power, sign agreement to secure $3 billion in cost savings, and our customers will remain our priority, ADBMD.
Let's take you online, citynewsroom.com. I'll ensure strict enforcement of anti-vigilantism law. This is Akufo-Addo. Also, Asiedu Ketia submits Mahama's nomination forms to EC and says, we won't boycott 2020 election. Meanwhile, we'd have loved to engage Mahama on voter registration concerns. This is Jean Mensah. Also, PPP flag bearer Bridget Jobenuku submits nomination forms once filing fee slashed. Now, if you go still in that website, Osofo Chiriabusum to begin 2-day tour of Oti region on Friday. Akufo-Addo inspect completed Namoligo 1v1D project. And Ghanaians can't waste 4 more years under NPP. This is Mahama campaigning in the Western North region. Now, if you go to City Business News, delisting on GSE, companies urge to strengthen corporate governance systems. Also, create conducive environment for struggling sectors. Tourism Chamber says so. Meanwhile, GCNet challenges NLC order on compensation payment for redundant workers. If you go to majoronline.com, affirmative action bill will be passed next year. This is the gender minister. Also, minority leadership demands suspension of parliament as only 16 MPs show up.
Campaign.
I'm telling you. Meanwhile, other stories, you are now president, promise do. Second term is assured. Tong Rana to Akufo-Addo. If you were in Nigeria, you would have said he's the Otokinadu.
Yeah.
Now, if you go to Star News, Asiedu Ketia files nomination for Mahama, reprimands EC. Tong Rana nicknames Akufo-Addo, promise do. Meanwhile, NDC parliamentary candidate for New Jobbing North dead. That's really strange. Ooh. And Burkinabe arrested for killing German girlfriend and daughter. We brought you that story on the City News this morning. Now, if you go to GNA, aspirants of NDC and PPP filed nominations. 5 more grabbed over stolen police rifles, invasion of police stations, and Council of State others commiserate with Rawlings. Those are the stories. Now, BBC and CNN is leading with the vice presidential debate in the US. Pence and Harris spar over pandemic in debate. And some say hits and misses from the VP debate. They say Harris edged it slightly. Yeah, that's what we're told. Let's get into the details.
Well, since we are already talking about presidential debates in other places and elections, let's start off at the EC. That's where all the action is. Now, former President Mahama, who is the NDC's presidential candidate, yesterday served notice to the EC that despite efforts by the commission to frustrate the party through alleged manipulative electoral processes, it will not be compelled to boycott the elections. Now, that's according to Johnson Asiedu Nketia, who is the General Secretary of the NDC. And he said so when he and other party stalwarts presented the nomination forms of John Dramani Mahama and his vice presidential aspirant, Professor J. Nana Opoku-Agyeman, to the EC as part of the process to contest the elections. In addition, Bridget Jobrenuku and her vice presidential nominee or aspirant, Kofi Asamoah were also at the EC's office to submit their nomination forms.
All right, and the graphic also has that story and adds that Ms. Jogbenuku called on the commission to consider reducing the filing fees for women who sought to contest for the highest office of the land to serve as motivation for women to participate in the country's politics. Quote, "We'll be happy if you can give us a discount to encourage women who have been deterred by money constraints." Yeah, that would be helpful. But yes. So yeah, we're talking elections.
There's a couple more angles here. Asiedu Nketia files nomination and reprimands the EC. Addressing the media ahead of submission on Wednesday, Mr. Asiedu Nketia reiterated his concerns about the voters register. Here's a quote: "The laws of the commission indicated that an old register does not become extinct until a new one is finalized and certified. We have a situation where we are called to file nomination. There is a big doubt as to which register we will base the documents for the filing of nomination. It's unfortunate that a mature democracy like Ghana's, we're having to go into elections as if we haven't tasted democracy before," he said. Then the EC chairperson speaking says, "We would have loved to engage Mahama on his concerns." So chairperson of EC, Mrs. Jean Mensah, had wanted flag bearer of the NDC, John Mahama, to file the nomination forms in person. According to her, she would have used the opportunity to engage the flag bearer of the NDC on his concerns with the ongoing electoral process. But as we know, it was the General Secretary that submitted the document on his behalf.
All right. Speaking of Mahama, he's going to go door to door after this campaign launch. This is in the Daily Heritage. The 2020 campaign spokesperson for the National Democratic Congress, James Ejinim Boateng, says their flag bearer will embark on a door-to-door campaign after their campaign launch, which was done yesterday. Just when Mr. Mahama finishes his address at the launch, he'll move straight into the communities and it's going to be felt immediately. It's going to be a door-to-door campaign. Now, he said this to the Morning Star host, Francis Avam, on Star FM. Meanwhile, the General Secretary of the NDC, as you've already said, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, led a delegation to the EC to file the nominations on behalf of President Mahama. So the door-to-door campaign is starting.
Well, as part of that, former President Mahama has been speaking. He's the NDC's candidate. He says that he grew the economy by $14 billion as compared to the MPP's 4 billion.
14 million cedis.
Okay, it's 14 billion cedis, sorry, as compared to that of the NPP. According to him, the records are there to reconcile that in 2012, Ghana's GDP was $41 billion, and by the end of 2016, it had jumped astronomically to $55 billion. On that same page,
Cedis.
it says dollars here.
No. Okay, yeah, GDP, yes, sorry.
Yes,
correct.
says
GDP, yes, correct. Yes.
So on that same page, the paramount chief of the Talensi traditional area, Tong Rana Kubilsong Nalebekang, I hope I got the name right, apologies, has said the second term victory for Nana Akufo-Addo is assured. According to the Tong Rana, President Akufo-Addo has goodies in mind to transform the entire Upper East region. Thus, he had already cleared his way to victory in the 2020 polls.
Well, he actually gave him a nickname. He calls him, we call it the Otokinadu, but he says basically when he talks, he does. That story is on many websites. But let me do the Upper East, then you come to what Otumfo is saying.
Okay.
Because the president also in the Upper East region inspected the completed Namoligo 1v1D project. Now, the president, Nana Akufo-Addo, has inspected the completed 1v1D project constructed in Namoligo in the Talensi constituency, not far from where the chief is actually, accompanied by the Upper East Regional Minister Paulina Abayega and the Minister for Food and Agriculture, Dr. Osifri Akoto. The president was told that the construction and fulfillment of the 2016 manifesto promise of the NDC was undertaken by the Ghana Irrigation Development Authority, GIDA. The Namoligo Dam is one of 10 small dams that have been completed by the government through the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. The contract for the construction of the dam was awarded in May 2019, and the dam has been subsequently finished. With the project costing 2.5 million cedis, the dam has a water storage capacity of 145,000 cubic meters and has a minimum dam life of 40 years. The president was told that for occasional supplementary irrigation, the cropping area for vegetables can increase to some 50 hectares with optimum yields assured, since crops will always get the needed water required for healthy growth throughout the growth stages.
All right, and the Asantehene has been talking. He says, resist endorsing aspirants. The Asantehene Otumfo Osei-Tutu II has advised chiefs, particularly those in Asanteman, to resist the temptation of endorsing political party aspirants for election 2020. He said it was important that traditional rulers maintain the sanctity of the chieftaincy institution by doing away with partisan politics and instead maintain their neutrality. Addressing the Ashanti Regional House of Chiefs at a general meeting in Kumasi yesterday, the Asantehene said chiefs remain the last resort for resolving conflicts in the country, and if they were seen to be partisan, it would be difficult for anyone to seek their intervention when conflicts or disputes arose. According to him, it was a good reason that the Constitution precluded chiefs from partisan politics, and he explained that not all the people they presided over would belong to the parties the chiefs supported.
Some didn't get the memo early enough.
Exactly.
Now, still on the campaign trail, the vice president has also been campaigning.
Oh, yes.
And he's also been quoted in a few papers.
He's been saying quite a bit, actually. So on the front page of the Daily Guide, show one social relief,
Right.
Bawumia to NDC. Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia has said many people will attest to the fact that the Akufo-Addo-led New Patriotic Party administration is working assiduously to reduce the hardships of Ghanaians. The Vice President then threw a challenge to ex-President John Dramani Mahama and his National Democratic Congress to tell Ghanaians a single policy they implemented to lessen the suffering of the people when they were in office. Citing examples of how the current government is reducing the hardship of Ghanaians, Dr. Bawumia, who celebrated his birthday yesterday, mentioned the free SHS policy as a major social intervention that would continue to bring hope to the people. Quote, the policy had reduced the suffering of parents who could not pay school fees for their children, he said while addressing the chiefs and people of Atupiase in the Wassa East District of the Western Region yesterday.
Well, the New Crusading Guide also has a take from the Vice President's trip to Wassa East, and he says Mahama's time in government was akin to a bad marriage.
Right.
So he went on to draw up this analogy of a woman marrying a man and the man being unable to care for the woman and the children, and then she moving on to marry a new man who's very capable of doing all of that. And then the old husband shows up and says, marry me again. Then the question was, will you marry him? Of course you won't. Then the place went absolutely crazy with laughter and all of that. So
still on the election, voter transfers to begin October 20, exclusive to students and security personnel. This story is on citynewsroom.com. It says the EC says it will open the voter register window, or the voter transfer window, from Tuesday, October 20 to Sunday, October 25 this year. But unlike in previous elections, the EC says this opportunity would be availed to only students who registered while in school and some security personnel. The director of electoral service at the EC, Dr. Shribo Kweku, said this in an interview with Citi News. Here's a quote: by law, not less than 42 days to the election, we should allow for transfers. With the new CI 127, it's only students and security service outside the jurisdiction who can transfer. This will be done from the 20th to the 25th of this month. I think yesterday somebody called and said he lived in Accra but wanted to vote in the north.
Yes.
Now, if he's a security person, this can happen. He indicated that the exercise will allow the commission to compile the final register, which will be made available to all political parties by November 11. So that's another month, if you like, to election 2020. All right, guys, what else are you taking me to?
Okay, a couple of health issues.
okay, you just deal with that, and then we can talk about some crime.
All right. Don't forget that this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so we want October.
I didn't know
and
this.
I know this year, for some reason it seems a bit quieter than previous years.
COVID.
You think COVID has affected that as well,
taken
right?
everything.
So just want to remind ladies out there to go for screenings. Check the boobs. I'll find the article in the Daily Graphic about some things that have
before
been
you come to health and things, let me take you back to politics, but this is
Okay.
more national governance. Minority leadership demands suspension of parliament as only 16 MPs show up. Guys, 16. I'm reading this from my Joy Online by Abednego Asantia Siedu. Now, how many people do you have in parliament? 275, right?
Yep.
Good. The minority leadership in parliament wants the house to be suspended so as to buy time for colleagues who are currently in their constituencies to file their nominations. As of 11:30 a.m. Wednesday, only 16 members of parliament were present in the chamber of the house. And this is 275. Deputy Minority Leader James Aveji, who raised the issue on the floor, described it as worrying. Now, speaking during the consideration of a $243 million facility for the procurement of standard gauge rolling stocks, Mr. Aveji said the commencement of public business on the floor must start only when there are MPs present, more MPs present. We cannot be taking decisions when out of 275 people, only 16 are here. We are not doing our country any good, Mr. Speaker. Let us get the numbers. The members can debate the issues very well. Then we will go and get them approved. But majority leader Osechi Mensah said he is surprised by the MP stance. This, according to him, is because leadership has agreed to relax the rules. Anyway, due to the activities of MPs ahead of the 2020 elections. Mr. Speaker, we discussed this extensively yesterday, and we decided that these are not normal times. Come on. Especially this week, when members have to be at their various constituencies to do the filing. But notwithstanding, we appealed to ourselves yesterday that we anticipate that we will not have a full house, but members should avail themselves to normal business to be done. We agreed on this, and I'm surprised the deputy minority leader is getting up just the following day after we have made the appeal to say that the house cannot go on. Hey, but 16 out of 275, what percentage is
less
that?
than 10%.
Well, then what happened? I think we can go ahead. The majority leader said, now, given his ruling, Speaker of Parliament Aaron Makokwe urged MPs to stick to their decision to ensure smooth transaction of business on the floor. So he agreed with the majority leader. There were certain decisions taken yesterday with regards to enabling this house to go on. And I can see some members nodding to that effect because they know what we agreed on. So let's just make progress. Now listen to this. Meanwhile, a total of 42 bills are expected to be presented by the executive arm of government for Parliament's consideration now that the House has resumed. And Kate Ado, the Director of Public Affairs, said the bills are expected to cover various sectors. And quickly, let me run through the bills. Judicial Service Bill 2020, Creative Arts Bill 2020, Council of State Bill 2020, Wildlife Bill, among others. Currently, a total of 19 bills are before various committees of Parliament for consideration. Some include the Exemption Bill, the Anti-Money Laundering Bill, and the Public Universities Bill. Wow.
42 bills and 16 MPs.
I tell you, 16 out of 275. That's like 1%. It's less than 10%.
Yeah, that's less than 10%.
Amazing stuff.
All right. Okay, so yes, again, Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So Sonotech Medical and Diagnostic Center is calling on all stakeholders, especially the government, to do more to increase awareness on breast cancer. A survey conducted by the Department of Chemical Pathology, School of Medical Sciences at University of Cape Coast in 2016 on some 3,000 randomly selected and screened women for breast cancer, diagnosed 23 out of 194 of them as positive breast cancer cases with clinically palpable breast lumps. About 30% of these cancer cases were in women below the age of 35. Yes, so it's indicating a relative possible shift of cancer burden to women in their early 30s in Ghana compared to Western countries. So we need to keep our eye on some of these things and find out why a lot of young women. Also, polio vaccination, sticking with health, the Greater Accra Regional Health Service is giving assurance that the polio vaccine that will be administered to children under 5 from today to Sunday is not a trial vaccine. Accordingly, it's asking parents to submit their children for the vaccination exercise, which will be the third round of the campaign by the Ghana Health Service. People think the vaccine is a trial vaccine. It's never true. As a result, in September, there were many people who were reluctant to submit their children for the exercise. This is a polio vaccine tested and approved, and it has nothing to do with COVID-19.
If you go to page 3, of the Ghanaian Times, there are some crime stories there. The first one, Burkinabe arrested for murdering German partner and daughter at Kokrobite. So a 43-year-old Burkinabe has been arrested by the police for allegedly murdering his German partner and daughter at Kokrobite in Accra. The deceased, Claudia Weisman, 53, and her daughter, Katia Opa, 14, were reportedly buried in the bush of a compound by the suspect, identified as Boyguna Alois. And that was disclosed by DSP, or the Accra Regional Public Relations Officer of the Police, DSP Ifiatinga. The other story, 2 jailed 8 years for stealing cash from Bullion van.
Wow.
Now, 2 persons who stole 1,20,500 in a Bullion van in 2017 have been sentenced to 4 years imprisonment each by an Accra Circuit Court. Bismarck Abem, cash in transit officer, and Eric Labi, a driver, were found guilty at the end of trial on the charges of conspiracy to commit crime, to wit stealing, and stealing. The court presided over by Mrs. Justice Jane Harriet Akwele Kwe, the High Court judge, with additional responsibility as a circuit court judge, sentenced them to 2 years imprisonment each on the charge of conspiracy to commit crime, to wit stealing. So
can you take me to the economy now? There's a front page on the Ghanaian Times. The BOG descends on money doubling.
Yes, that's on page 12 as well.
Okay.
So the Bank of Ghana has cautioned the public against depositing monies with persons running money doubling, card loading and credit card loading system services for higher returns. According to the BOG, it was illegal for any person or institution without the mandate and authority of the regulator to advertise and engage in the above activities on traditional and social media platforms. A press statement signed by Sandra Thompson, Secretary of BOG, and issued on October 5 in Accra, noted that individuals and entities engaged in the practice to commit an offence and would be required to return all funds received as well as be liable for conviction.
Okay.
All right, Business and Financial Times, speaking of the economy, revenue exceeds targets in July amid pandemic pressure.
Wow.
Yeah, that's on page 3. The country's total revenue for July 2020 has showed significant improvement, even surpassing the target amid lingering pressures from the coronavirus pandemic, which have led to deceased economy activity. Data from the Bank of Ghana's Monetary Policy Committee report shows that the total revenue and grants from July exceeded the target by 3.4%, recording 27.7 billion Ghana cedis compared with a target of 26.8 billion Ghana cedis. In terms of growth to GDP, total revenue grew by 7.2% compared to 6.9% in June. The growth is even more significant when the data is analyzed in context of the pandemic. The summary of economic and financial data shows a very disappointing growth in revenue at the beginning of the year, as it recorded monthly growth of 1.22 and 2.8% in the first quarter. Globally, the virus started taking a toll on the world's economy from February, leading to closure of borders, etc., which nearly shut down economies around the world. You can read more in the Business and Financial Times.
There's a business story in the Heritage that is troubling. It says aviation sector faces shutdown as staff protest encroachment of airport lands. This story keeps coming up. Days after staff and union leaders of the Ghana Airports Company hoisted red flags and banners at the company in demand for the removal of their managing director, Yao Kwakwa. Their colleagues from the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority are also embarking on a protest over encroachment of their lands. The staff are protesting what they term grabbing of lands of the authority. They warn the country's aviation sector risk shutdown if immediate steps are not taken to safeguard lands crucial for the operations of the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority.
Okay. If you go to the Business Finder, it says pensioners not worse off. That's SNIT responding to some speculation or so. Now, SNIT has mounted a
It's not speculation.
Well,
it was
a story,
a
I think, by the
report
Daily
done
Graphic.
by the Daily
Sorry, not
Graphic.
speculation, but the Daily Graphic is a very, very detailed report. Now, SNIT is saying that they've put up a spirited defense of the existing pension scheme governed by Act 766, stating that pensioners have not been made worse off under the 3-tier pension scheme. According to the trust, the monthly pension paid under Act 766 is better than the residual pension paid under PNDCL 247.
All right.
Right, very quickly. Presec, OWAS, Adisco, in for bragging rights. It is the Titanic clash that Bernard is waiting for. It promises to be a clash of the Titans this afternoon when 3 senior high schools face off in the grand finale of the 2020 National Science and Maths Quiz, the country's biggest and most patronized academic contest at the high school level, arguably. In an all-boys school affair, Presbyterian Boys SHS Presec Legon, Opukuwari SHS OWAS, and Adisadol College Adisco will contest for the bragging rights in a quiz that promises mouth-watering excitement and academic wizardry. Hey! Severius Kildare.
Severius Kildare.
Yeah. Severius.
He's a big man.
His name.
He attends the
says it all.
St. Joseph Catholic Church in Adenta.
Oh.
He's a big man.
Academic wizardry.
He's a member of the...
Severius, I like your academic wizardry description of the contest. But Charlie, Bernard, is Presec going to take it again?
We are quietly,
for the 6th time.
We are quietly confident. we are not making noise.
Adisco is there.
We are quietly
Fukuwari is coming.
Don't tell, keep quiet. Okay.
This is the Citi Breakfast Show, the city's biggest conversation.